we're going to get started with this evening's Town Board work session for March 6, 2017. The goal of this work session is to have the Town Board receive information on topics of town business from town manager, town attorney, and town staff in order to exchange ideas and opinions regarding these topics. Up first on our agenda this evening is Cartograph and Your Gov information. Staff presentation from Mr. Groves. Mr. Groves.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Town Board. So tonight we've got some information, a little bit of follow-up for you on some projects that we've been working on. So Cartograph and YourGov, this goes back to about 2015, where IT, Public Works, and Parks started looking at software to better track some of our operations and be able to analyze the data that it takes for us to operate from day to day. So what we've got in front of you today is those two items, Cartograph and YourGov. Cartograph being the operations management system as a whole. So that tracks the work that we do, the resources that we put into it, what assets they go to, things of that nature. And then YourGov, this bottom part below that, is the public-facing portal that integrates in with our work order management system, if you will. So the nice thing about these two systems is, while separate, they integrate in with each other. And that allows us to really streamline our citizen requests into our work order management system. And that makes our communication with our citizens that much easier and simpler for them to get in contact with us as well. So what you see here is a very quick and dirty kind of workflow of how this works. So at the very left, you see the YourGov side and that dotted line. So that's where a citizen would put in their request regarding a pothole or trash in a park or a broken sidewalk, things like that. They would then follow to the right. It would then immediately follow into the Cartograph side. Staff would get a notification about that request. Work would be assigned and reviewed, and a resolution or the problem would be fixed. And it would circle back to the citizen to say that your request that you've put in has been resolved. So that is a quick and dirty overview of what we've got going on and how that kind of process works. Eric and Terry and Katie will step through some different pieces of how this works, a little bit of what we get out of it, some of our goals, and a little bit of our marketing and implementation plan. So I'll turn it over to them.
I have a quick question though. What happens if the initial request that was made is not something that is going to be resolved? I mean, like, what if a citizen or somebody makes a request that is something we simply can't do? Does it stop, does that process stop right there, or does it kind of still go through the process and then the information goes back to them that that's not something that is town's responsibility or something to that nature?
Like what we do right now under the report, if there was something that we can't do or feel that that's not in our purview, then we would respond to them to let them know that this is why we don't do this, or what we can only do it to this level for whatever the reasons are, and have a dialogue with them. On the Cartograph side, we would then end the work order or have never entered it in the work order, so
Okay.
if we knew immediately that it wasn't something that we do. So maybe even someone would ask, there's an issue of something that isn't on maybe it's on private property and it's not ours, so it would never go into the Cartograph system.
Okay.
But we would respond to them via email or phone to let them know that in my example, this is on private property. It's not something that the town deals with. You could, and maybe give them some advice, like talk to your neighbor, or, call their own contractor or something like that.
Okay, and then are those tracked? Are those able to be tracked somehow? Like if we're getting a substantial amount of those kinds of requests on a particular, like, let's say it is something that is happening in the county, and so, but folks don't recognize it as a county. So is there something that would trigger, so that we would know, gee, this is like the 10th call, maybe we need to talk to the county, and they need to do some kind of proactive measure to, so these folks understand?
Yeah, so how YourGov works is it will only actually notify us of a request if it is within our town limits.
Okay.
So if things are submitted outside of town limits, we will actually not be notified of it.
Oh, you would, okay.
Cartograph does try to send those requests to whoever they can find in this case. So it not to say they go into a black hole and are never seen again, but we definitely do not see them.
Oh, okay.
Just a quick clarification, I apologize if I missed this, but who reviews the request?
That depends on the type of request that is submitted. So if it's a park thing, it goes to parks.
Okay.
If it relates to
Okay.
streets, streets.
Gotcha, thank you.
But just to follow up on the mayor's comments, so if it was somebody in town that made the request, but it was about something just outside of town, would we just kind of send a referral then to that agency?
Yeah, that's what Cartograph tries to do, is notify the responsible county or municipality
Okay.
that there's a request out there.
And is that the resolution then, that we forwarded this down to Larimer County or whatever?
It would all be on the Cartograph side, so we wouldn't see that request. We wouldn't know about it unless the citizen outside of YourGov notified us about it.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
kind of.
You have Cartograph pulled up underneath?
Mhm.
Okay, I didn't see it. So just briefly, some goals, as you can see on the screen. The big one for us on the staff side is cost accounting. So we can now see over the course of time what it costs to do business. And as you'll see in some slides in a little bit, how much does it cost for a snowstorm? How much does it cost to maintain a park? And then we can break it into specific sizes of parks and those kind of things. So ultimately, over time, it becomes a budgeting tool for us to determine what does it cost to maintain our park system, or to make determinations. As you know, we're working on master plan decisions on whether we should build small parks or big parks, and we can be, over time have that information to look at it and say, well, it costs X to maintain a 5-acre park, and it costs X to maintain a 25-acre park. Maybe it's cheaper to do one versus the other. So it will help us in some decision-making tools as well. Mobile functionality, there's an app that's out there that citizens can download, just like any other app that you've got, and then they can be out in the field. They can be walking in a park or walking on a sidewalk and see something, and they can immediately report it in WIKIT. So it really improves the ease of citizens' requests to get information to us, to notify us. They're the eyes and the ears out there. They see things every day. So and really allow that information flow back and forth between the town and the citizens, and obviously tracking the information and the data. So I'm going to hop out of here real quick and just show you the it's on there. So what you're going to see is this is my dashboard, and so you can begin to look at, and Terry sees a very similar dashboard, and you can begin to look at our entire system. So all of these dots represent items that are within our town. So for example, over here under asset summary, there are 68 beds, so those are meaning flower beds. Irrigation controllers, there's 3,479 irrigation lines, all the way down to, if I scroll down, there's that one right there, there's 7,679 sewer mains. So almost 6,000 signs. It was interesting for me as a park person, not being a public works person, within those 6,000 signs, there are 5 pieces to every sign. So when the staff from Public Works goes and inspects a sign, they have to look at 5 different pieces on every sign. So it really gives you a totality of what it takes to run a community. And so, you drive down Main Street, you might see some flower beds or trees, but you don't really realize all the parts and pieces that go into making up a community. And when you start to see it, and staff has spent oodles of time over the winter implementing and getting this data in, and we're still doing that. We go to sites now and see, well, we forgot to add this park bench, or we forgot to add, when the farmer's market gets installed, we'll have to add that as well. So it really is a way for us to see everything that is town-owned, town-maintained, and then we will track. So like across the top, requests from YourGov come in. We track, so under work is basically like a work order. So staff would put in a work order like, you need to pick up the trash at this park this many days, or there's a pothole on Main Street. And so all of those works are then tracked, and this is real time. So if this is updating, someone like staff could be in there saying, I just picked up the trash at, or I just filled a pothole on this location. And so what they do then see, what we see over time is we could see, like for example, Main Street has had 100 potholes filled in the last year. And so then maybe we need to be repaving or resurfacing that street sooner rather than later, because we're seeing wear and tear. So we can really begin to analyze the assets that we have and how we maintain them. And then on the flip side, this is how we also track citizen requests and work orders that come in from the public. And so down here in the bottom, and right now our average time to complete tasks are a little over 2 days. And so that will be another data set that we'll be able to report to you, that it's taking X number of hours or days to respond to citizens. That's something we could hopefully be very proud of. 2 days of response time is really good when you talk about the totality of our entire system. And right now, it's Parks that is using it, Public Works that are using it, branching out. I think you heard Kelly mention last week when we were talking about special events. Luke's going to get trained to be at a special event to this summer, so we'll be able to actually see what does it cost to run a special event. We're also adding field maintenance that's on the recreation side. So Parks doesn't maintain all the athletic fields. There's some work that's done by the recreation crew, and those folks are going to begin using Cartograph as well. So when you see staff out in the field and they have an iPad, that's what they're doing. They are entering the data, so they're seeing what their tasks are. They're going out and doing the work. They come back and they say, I spent X number of hours working on this project. I use these tools. I use this equipment, whatever it was. I had to go to the store and buy a part, and it tracks it. So I'll jump back out and show you. So for example, if I wanted to know what we have spent year to date at the cemetery, I can run a report, just get in there and run one for any park. And so this is an example that we put on here. For the first 2 months of the year, that's what it cost to operate the cemetery in regards to different things like burials, headstones, grading work, turf, picking up trash, etc. So that gives us, and again, 2 months in, a glimpse of what it costs to operate.
Is this hours only, or would this include all?
This is everything. This is hours, equipment, things like trash bags, those kind of things. And we've made some decisions. So for example, we don't track, staff might spend a half an hour in the office working on something in the office. We've chosen not to track that. So we've made some key decisions, and I think what would be really interesting is over a course of a year, so next year when we return and have a whole year's data set, to look at it and say, were there things that we're tracking that maybe we didn't need to track, or there's things that we weren't tracking that we should add? And really, so the folks in the field are so important. They've been being trained for several months to enter this information, and so we're just starting to see what it costs to operate a system. So, you know, we haven't been mowing grass yet or anything like that. So when you look at, you know, 2 months, it's not that big of a deal probably at the cemetery, but it's also been only January and February. So it's really interesting information. And again, you know, we've talked about a lot. The data will drive decisions that we make in the future. So.
Eric, so, I mean, this looks great for looking at kind of the operations side of it, but in terms of projects or special projects going on within the cemetery, are those woven into here, or is that completely separate?
Yes, so every site has basically like a geo fence around it. So like, for example, the cemetery. But let's say we were gonna build another building at the cemetery.
Right.
We can break that out as a task and then and create a code so that everything that goes into that building, we can then input cost to it in man hours, equipment, materials, et cetera, so then we can pull that out and say, well, that building cost us X. We're doing that right now with the farmer's market. So that's why I was able to say during earlier discussions that we've spent about $6,000 in the demo of the pad, because within Boardwalk Park, we pulled out that site and said, this is a project, farmer's market demolition, all costs, all work related to this gets entered in the cartograph for that one system. So I could pull the report that says, this is what we spent year to date on the farmer's market, and who did it, and what days it was done, and what the costs were for each day, those kind of things.
Just so I'm clear, are the costs based off of estimates that you received, or are they out the hard dollar, this is what we actually paid?
Some of them are hard dollar for like we're buying a widget, for example. Then, for example, salary or payroll costs. We've chosen for a park maintenance worker or a public works street worker, we've chosen
A rate.
a rate, and every one of them within the system is charged that rate. So some people make more, some people might make a little less. That's the rate so there is some decision making that we've chosen because people see, for example, staff is able to see the rate, and so we didn't want everybody seeing what everyone makes. We chose, you know, $20 an hour, whatever it was, and that's what everybody sees.
Thanks.
With that, I will turn it over to Terry, and I think he's going to show you an example of snow and go from there.
Going along with what Eric said, you know, the problem that we had when we had a snowstorm, we really never knew how much it cost. So by tracking this, if you get a 2-inch storm, you get an 8-inch storm, you'll be able to track how much those storms cost you. And then if you have to end up plowing cul-de-sacs, what that ended up costing you to plow cul-de-sacs. And what we do is we've had the fleet department give us a cost of what it costs to run our snow plows per mile. And each one of our plows right now plows about 50 miles, centerline miles of road. And centerline miles of road is just that, 50 miles, but sometimes it takes 4 or 5 passes on those roads, so then you have to times it by 4. So, you know, most of the trucks will be plowing 200 miles plus of all the 6 trucks that we have. So that's an abundance of miles, and depending on how deep the snow is or how wet it is, it's going to take a little longer. As you can see on the screen, this particular snow event, which was January 3rd snowstorm, we estimated we spent $62,627.30 for that one storm. And that was just a general storm of a little over 6 inches of snow, and we did end up plowing cul-de-sacs for that snowstorm, but you can see the snowstorm before that was around 28,000, and now this one was, you know, up in the 62,000. So it gives us a good indication of what it is costing us to do snow and snow removal. Same thing with asphalt patching. We will know what it costs to do an asphalt patch per patch, depending on whether we're having to dig it out, whether we're having to haul the asphalt or whatever. We'll know what that's costing us. Same with our water. We know we'll have 4,000 valves, water valves in town. We have to exercise those. And so we will track how long it takes to exercise those valves. We'll know how many have been done, so we know whether we've got through the whole system or not. Same with our sewer lines. So you know, it's very productive for us because we're finally gonna be able to track how much time it takes for the person to take care of each and every aspect of our infrastructure. So, that's a real plus. Yeah, Ken?
How do you come up with the cost for equipment?
It's based on history of what it's cost us each year to run that equipment. And then he takes that average of those pieces of equipment, and that's what's put into Cardiograph. So let's say a loader's $65 an hour to run. That's what it's gonna charge us, $65 for an hour of running that loader.
Is that including depreciation of our equipment, or?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
The other thing, as we mentioned, all the signposts we have and the signs, you know, we'll be able to track all of that, like Eric was saying. We just started doing the stormwater, so we know where all of our storm basins are, all of our inlets and outlets are. So we have a basis of that for when we do go to the MS4 in 2018, we'll have some indication of where all of those are. So, you know, every time you get done with a certain infrastructure, whether it's water, sewer, or whatever, then something else pops up. Well, we could use it for this or that. And so last night we had a water main break at 700 block of Locust. When they closed out the work order and everything this morning, it cost us $1,800 to repair that water line last night. So, you know, it's given us a good indication of how much it costs and how much time the people are putting into each activity. That's pretty much all I have. If you have any other questions.
Questions?
I have a question. For the public user side, I've been known to email Kelly with concrete problems in our neighborhood. Some of them are not urgent, you know, it could be a crack, but I just wanna let them know. How do we reply back to those people? Are they customized, or they just get a generic, we'll get on it?
We had one today, and it went to Brian. Brian ended up telling Curtis about it. Curtis contacted the individual, told her what the plan was, and told her when that would be replaced, and that's how we handle that. So it won't be closed out if it's already been put down as a task. It won't be closed out until it is actually finished, and then it'll be closed off.
But the person that submits it will be notified that it's a low priority and it could be in the
Yes.
next budget cycle to
Yep.
fix that concrete.
Exactly.
Okay. And how, can we determine if people are submitting the same problem? Like, or if I see someone's already submitted that pothole, I don't need to do it again?
So a benefit of YourGov is that you have that visual map, and your requests are not the only requests that you see. You can see other requests that others have submitted. So you don't have 3 requests for that same pothole. You've got the one.
Okay.
So yes.
Yeah, I can.
Well, and say, would the public be able to see how quickly task was completed, like we can on your desktop?
No, they
No.
would not.
I mean, we
Unless
could,
they were the
as part
requests.
of your gov, we could let people know on the average it's taken us 2 days to handle, you know, anything that comes into us. That's, you know, what the average has been as of now.
Would they see what tasks have been completed?
No.
No, not in YourGov. They only see open requests.
Okay, all right.
Paul?
I was gonna ask, is the police department on this, or are they on their own system, or?
They're on a separate form-based reporting at this point.
Okay, just curious.
We will probably, it'll be up to Kelly and the rest of the department heads, but each department will probably end up finding a need of some sort to where they'll start using them as well. But Public Works and Parks were the 2 largest departments that we saw a benefit of being able to use them, and so it'll eventually, you know, more and more people will start using it.
Cody, why don't you describe what are we gonna do with our number 1? So our number 1 complaint comes in right now is dogs barking. So what happens on that case?
So in that case, it goes into a form, as it does now, and gets directed back to the police department.
I was a little track it. It is
And-
our number 1,
Wow.
dogs barking.
Probably my dogs.
question just about the system.
Sure.
So, I saw what the upfront cost was.
Yes.
What's it gonna cost, do we have to renew this every
Yes.
year? And
So
what
we
does that
pay-
cost to renew it? And then do we get, every year, along with renewal, are we able to get like the most recent updates? Or does it automatically, is the system automatically updated throughout the year if there's new, you know,
Yeah.
options, plugins, all those kinds of things?
Right, so yes, we do pay an annual maintenance fee to Cartograph, and that includes our support and regular maintenance of the system. We get updates as they come out. It's not a once-a-year thing, so if there's a improvement that comes along, we get it right then and there.
Okay. Do we know how much the renewal's gonna tend to run on it?
Off the top of my head, it was approximately $30,000 a year.
I'm sorry, what?
30,000.
30?
$30,000 a year,
Okay.
if I could get the mic.
Okay.
So moving forward, we're going to use this, staff's going to use this for our budgeting because it gives us a great tool now to know what it's costing us to do the different tasks throughout the town. So we'll use it for budgeting. We'll look at and do an analysis at the end of the year and decide whether what we're doing is accurate enough or maybe we need to add something or delete something because we'll see what, you know, the projects are coming in at and what it's taking us to do them in-house. So we can make those comparisons as well. We'll do the quarterly reporting, letting everyone know, you know, where we're at, what we've done, what we've accomplished, and the money spent. And the best thing is probably improved citizen engagement because they're going to have a way to know that what they're calling and reporting to us is getting taken care of in a timely manner.
Can I ask a question? Do we have any feedback from other communities that are using this system?
Yeah, so we've, our closest community that is using Cartograph and YourGov is the city of Golden. We actually utilize them quite a bit just as a resource in our implementation and tried to learn some of the problems that they've had and implement a little bit better up front. So yeah, the city of Golden has been a great resource for us on that.
Good.
So over the course of the next month, we'll be finalizing all of the community engagement aspects of this, so that way we have some awareness of how to actually submit the request and where, and so we'll be working on a variety of marketing materials, both digital and print. And here's a sample. Pass these around a bit. What we'll be working on in terms of the campaign. That we feel will be used across all of the materials to be able to help promote it. We'll be focusing on the awareness campaign in the month of April, and then moving on a quarterly basis throughout the rest of this year. And then we'll see how 2017 goes to what we need to look to doing for a reminder throughout 2018. So right now we're in the beta phase, and this week we hope to begin a soft launch, which means we'll have everything available on our website. The public can use it, but we're not publicly promoting it yet, so that way our staff can kind of ease into the process. And then our goal is to go live in early April, hopefully the first week, and that's when we'll really begin promoting it across all of our platforms and tools. Any questions?
So Cody, just kind of like the dog barking, so if somebody wants to send a comment to the town board on something, they don't use your gov.
Yeah,
So is it gonna be two separate?
yeah.
Why don't you describe for them how that's gonna work?
The page. So this is a draft version that we have of our new YourGov page. As you can see up there, we kind of broke it down into two different pieces. There's a general feedback and an infrastructure related thing. The YourGov app encompasses things that are related to infrastructure, roads, parks, things of that nature. If you click on there's the map-based application you see there. Comments for town board are in an online form very similar to what you see now through this general feedback link. Thank you, Katie.
so it's gonna look very similar to what we have now.
Yes.
And it'll function the same way in which it'll email all of the appropriate parties that we've determined. And so the YourGov side of it, the infrastructure side, is quite slick. So this is just the browser version. You can type in your address, or if you have geolocation services turned on, it'll automatically pinpoint where you're at. You can move the pin on the map to be able to really hone in on where it's at. It's even easier on your phone. You can download the app right now and submit requests. And again, if geolocation is turned on, it automatically drops a pin exactly where you're at. You select the issue, can snap a picture, and upload any other supporting details that you may want. The web version is also available, so that way, you know, if you want to go back home and do it, you're welcome to do that as well.
So this does not take the place of Notify Me. We still will have Notify Me, or,
Yes, this is replacing Report It, but yes,
Okay.
we'll still have Notify Me.
Okay.
So let me clarify, one of the things, if there's a specific issue in somebody's specific district, is it only that district member that's gonna find out about it in addition to the other parties, or it'll still be, okay, nice.
No, it'll go, again, YourGov will do infrastructure type things, goes out there, they'll put it on this map, it'll be tracked on this map, anybody can look at it. But if it's a specific issue up there above, they wanna send it to you, they'll use your email, or if it goes to town board, they can send it to town board, but it does not break down necessarily by districts.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
anything else about this topic? Well, it sounds like a great tool that we will have, and I think everybody benefits, not only the town, but especially our citizens, so good luck with all of that.
Katie, do you want those?
You can keep them,
Okay?
hang them up in your fridge.
Are we ready to move to our next subject then? So our second item this evening on the agenda is our Brand East discussion this evening. And who's gonna take the lead on that?
So I can start until my
Okay.
voice gives out, which will be soon. Tonight, in front of you, you have a request from Mr. Martin Lind, who is going to come up here and give you information and present in the PowerPoint his request. His request is to enter into a business development agreement with the town of Windsor for the development of the Brands East, which he has already entered into a similar agreement with the city of Loveland. In the memo, we gave you the link to the city of Loveland's information, if you've had a chance to look at that. And in tonight's information, Mr. Lynn will go through his request in PowerPoint. Then we also have information staff's put together, if you'd like to review that upon the request. So I'm gonna turn over to Mr. Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Mayor, town board. Martin Lynn, 1625 Pelican Lakes Point, Windsor, Colorado. We're here as a continuance of the executive session discussion we had a couple weeks ago to visit about the property that is in the city limits of Windsor, but part of our large project called the Brands at the Ranch. The project in Windsor we call Brands East. It will be a destination retail center. We anticipate it being best in class. The project itself, the Brands, is getting a lot of attention due to the business assistance agreement we got in Loveland. And right after we procured that, we came immediately to Windsor, worked with their staff to bring to parity the area over there so that our retailers can decide where they want to go based on what is offered to them across the board parity, and not have them playing one city against the other. So we were open book. We brought exactly what Loveland did with us, which we derived out of what Timnath and Johnstown were doing at other intersections when we did that. And what we feel we have is the dry powder, if you will, to attract a pretty significant retail surge in the I-25 area. And what we've done with this project is we've brought parity almost exactly to the Windsor or Loveland side. And in doing so, Windsor property taxes are about 10 mill levies higher than the Loveland side due to the fire department and the Windsor mill levy. So we actually lowered the Metro District mill levy we have on that side So again, we can have across the board, the retailers can decide which side of the road they want to go on and not play one city against the other. We're very excited about the area. We think that the area is one of the most attractive areas for the next big thing to happen on I-25, mainly because there's so much government expense over there, the ranch, the airport, the new $50 million interchange at Crossroads, the new 3-laning now, north and south on I-25. Kind of think it's Windsor's turn, that entrance, south entrance to Windsor, we have always felt very, very passionate that that shouldn't be light industrial and it should be a retail tax, sales tax gaining area. Our lifestyle center that we're going to build in Loveland is going to be a higher end, very attractive movie theaters, IMAX theaters, lots of restaurants. So we have the three projects, the Brands West, and the Brands East, all homogenized, but also we're trying to not conflict with users. So the Loveland side will have the plaza, some higher density vertical development. The projects that you see going on in the area right now are very successful, and we think that we can parlay off of that. The west side of I-25 we see as a power center, and the east side of Larimer County Road at 5, or Windsor side, would be the neighborhood center side. And so I think we're hitting all three legs of the stool. We think that there's well over $500 million of development that's going to happen at this intersection in the next 5 to 10 years, and a lot of it's going to start this fourth quarter. So we're in front of you tonight to talk about the development agreement and the business assistance agreement that we've worked out with staff. My staff is here to answer any detailed questions about the financials. Stacy's run the model for us. We think that this is a pretty exciting and pretty lucrative opportunity. Even though we are giving business assistance to these retailers, it's what it's going to take on I-25. And there's no sense ignoring the fact that incentives-based retail is where it's at. And we have Fort Collins, Timnath, Johnstown, Erie, Longmont, Meade, Loveland. They're all competing for these same retailers. So we'd like to put Windsor in the game as well. A little bit more of a site plan showing where the summit is in relation to the Lifestyle Center, and we obviously expect a pretty big boost out of just the sales tax off of that into the summit. Power Center, again on the airport side, quick rendering looking back towards Windsor from the Crossroads intersection, how vertical it's going to start to get over there. Some of the plaza concepts, again, more of the vertical above retail. And again, we think that the excitement that's going to go on over at the ranch is working on community outreach right now to work on what their next 20-year master plan is looking like. They're going to double the size of most of those buildings out there. Everybody's getting ready for that intersection to happen, and we're doing the same. Project Dynamics, 1,001,001 square feet, 347,000 square foot of retail. There's multifamily, there's Class A, limited service hotel. We have a little bit of light industrial left on this project, mini storage, and we think that it's going to create just short of 2,000 jobs and generate about $130 million in sales tax. And that is kind of the quick breeze through, and we're happy to answer the questions, and hopefully we can.
Go back to the map of Branzies.
Sure.
So this is the site that we're talking about tonight in Windsor. It's all in Windsor proper. And if you go through the letter, and then Ian has worked on an ordinance and a resolution. The agreement that's in your packet, the draft agreement, does follow the letter request, in which this area, the proposal is that the area that's undeveloped will be covered by this. In the red is retail. The golden rod warehouse, office components. And the blue is the multifamily. And then the other gold to the far east is the mini storage. Martin is proposing that the Metro District encompass this entire area for the inclusion of this agreement. But the incentives primarily focus on the red part, which is the retail part. And in that, he has requested that the expedited submittal reviews will come with that as things go along. That there's a fee waiver credit of $6.60 per square foot up to that for qualified anchor and junior anchor space. We can talk a little bit about those definitions. There's a fee waiver credit shall be limited to qualified space in which the space has not been previously occupied or built out by another tenant. Then the definitions, 2% says town sales tax rebate for the anchor retailer for 25 years, 2% town sales tax rebate for junior anchor for the initial 15 years, and then it drops to 1.25% for the following 10 years, then 1.25% sales tax rebate for 25 years for all the other non-anchor tenants. In this example, the red, and Martin Stewart, help me out, make sure I get it right. The big box in the middle of the 125K is the only anchor. And then there are, left my notes, got my notes somewhere, but 3 or 4 junior anchors, I believe, proposed.
Right. And junior anchor is defined by sales of 15 million. And again, we've set parity with what we've worked out with Loveland. And yes, we anticipate 3 junior anchors.
And then the balance are the rest, non-anchors.
Right.
The Metro District would build the roads and the stormwater detention as you displayed. Anything else you want to bring up, Martin? In this
We brought this project right here, that's the Marriott Springfield, and this would be the phase 2 dual flag. We've laid this site out about 150 different ways, and what you see in front of you is probably pretty accurate to what we think is going to ultimately be built, because it facilitates the big anchor and the parking required. It gives us a pretty nice parallel system out here. There's a big fiber optics line that runs north-south, and it's a land planning issue, which you'll see as we bring site plans through, but that's the purpose of squaring up the streets here. There's some big improvements out here on Crossroads, probably stoplight at this intersection here, and for sure stoplight right here at Rodeo. This property up here is developed, that's the Army Readiness Facility. There is a big regional detention pond that we've agreed to build and maintain at our cost. This project right here will be in front of you in the next couple months. In fact, there's a neighborhood meeting on it tonight. We think this is very viable. We think this is in fact, we think that there will be many building permits here before there is on the other side, just simply because this is more pad development over here. It's not have a lot of complex interaction between first floor retail and 3 more floors of residential above it. And there are a lot of retailers. There's over 100 retailers that are not currently in northern Colorado right now that are starting to see northern Colorado as a pretty dynamic market. So we want to get in the game as soon as we can and get out and present them. My partner, which you've met on this project, Steve Graham, he's out of town tonight, sends his regrets, but he's working full-time on this. We have a big booth at ICSC again last year. We had very productive ICSC last year for the Loveland side. We signed up the IMAX Theater and 3 restaurants, and we're very excited about this. It's finally Crossroads' turn. And if you've been down Highway 34, it's pretty obvious. It's been Highway 34's turn the last year and a half, but I think we have some significant advantages. I think we have much better transportation. I think we service the north-south corridors way better than they do down there. And there's a lot of exciting things going on at the ranch that we're going to finally get a capitalized sales tax off of that we're just currently not doing.
One element that's not in front of you tonight is the design standards. So this is covered, you have adopted design standards in here, but Loveland is on their side going through the design standard work right now. And we are being allowed to observe, I guess, for lack of a word, or watch that. And I think Martin's been amenable that if something comes out of that that's beneficial to this side, we would bring those back to you and talk to you about how to amend our design standards for this area so it'd be equal or similar to the Loveland side. So you're how far away from getting that mission accomplished?
We're roughly around, we've probably got 3 to 4 weeks away from submittal to the city of Lubbock, where we have working sessions every Thursday.
So that's the only element that is not scheduled yet in front of you. We can step through everything in the packet tonight, but the schedule right now, as it stands, is that on March 27th, the draft ordinance that is in your packet would be brought to you for consideration, along with the resolution.
The way I picture it is, we would ask you to, by resolution, approve the agreement, which is really the same thing that we always do with business assistance or incentive agreements. Those are done by resolution. And then, assuming that is approved, we would ask you to consider on first reading an ordinance that implements the changes to the sales tax and use tax collection process that is now in the code. So by code amendment, by ordinance, we will amend the code to implement the terms of the agreement. That would take 2 readings. The first reading is targeted for the 27th of March.
So in your packet, you also have one of the elements, obviously, is that we did an exercise to see how our costs for building permits and fees were related to Loveland. And so you can see there's three different examples of that. And it wasn't until very late in the game that I realized that 660 at 660 an acre foot, even the largest one, we would never get to the, what would we call, the credit that could be available for this would ever be maximized. So for instance, 50,000 square foot retail building valuation of $6 million, that would end up at about $330,000 credit. And the use tax would be about $91,000, administrative fee would be about $6,000, building fee of $23,000, and an electrical fee of $2,000 would be the eligible fees for reimbursement. So we really never, even in the big example, get to the 660 acre foot as far as building permit incentives go. Loveland's fees are higher than ours. We had at length a couple conversations amongst us about that, particularly their street fee is significantly higher than ours. But the conclusion of those discussions were essentially that I got to the point, well, if we're not going to reach the 660 acre foot, maybe it's not a relevant discussion necessarily, but even at their case, the developer's point is that shouldn't put ours still even more at a benefit of getting in front of somebody sooner because our fees are going to be less expensive than Loveland's, I think was the theory behind that. So the reality is when we tried to, after a couple meetings of wrestling with that issue, I kind of sat back and said, I don't think there's much to wrestle with here in a comparison to Loveland argument as far as fees. You know, Loveland, and we went around a little bit, we have a higher sales tax, 3.95, theirs is 3. They have a street maintenance fee that is paid on all developed properties. in Loveland. I'm kind of grumpy about that, but I'm over it because we don't have that, and maybe someday we'll talk about that. But that's something a business in Loveland will have to pay, where they won't have to pay, but people who shop will have to pay a higher sales tax. So there is a little bit different dynamic there as far as fees go. And then the last thing I want to mention is in the agreement you can see a referral to a little bit different defined anchor, which is, I want to use the right term, a grocer?
Anchor grocer.
Anchor grocer.
Right.
Which is not called out necessarily in the Loveland agreement, but is a little bit more specific to Windsor. And it does talk about how the PIF is going to be a little bit different in that case if an eligible business comes in that fits that criteria. And I don't know, like, Ian, do you want to talk about that further, or?
Yeah, and I think Martin may be able to help me. When it comes to a anchor grocer, what we're trying to do is give the developer an additional tool to lure a large grocer into that big spot you see there in the middle of the map, the 123,000 square feet. The idea would be that even though the rest of the agreement, all other retailers would get a percentage break on sales at the cash register equal to this credit PIF that's in the agreement. When it comes to an anchor retailer, Martin could waive collection of that, but we would still reduce our sales tax by that percentage. So what that means is the cost of the goods at that retailer is actually lower than the neighboring retailer who is subject to the PIF. It's just a tool that allows the developer to encourage a retailer, an anchor grocer, a large grocer, to come here and offer its product for a fractionally smaller rate that is tied to the developer waiving the PIF, yet the town continues to waive that percentage on its sales tax. So it's higher math when it comes to the mechanics of it, but I guess I look at it as a small incremental tool that the developer can use to attract that particular kind of retailer.
So we don't have do we have a protection clause in here against what we call cannibalism of retail that's already here, but that it moves from another location to this location? Do we still have that, but we're excluding the grocer component?
Right, we're saying that an anchor grocer, even one that is doing business elsewhere in Windsor, would still be entitled to that kind of treatment under the agreement. We do have a cannibalization clause. It's such a harsh word. But we have a clause that says if you're an existing business and you want to move to the Brands and go dark in another location in Windsor, the incentives are available only with the town board's consent. So there are a couple of examples where we say that things can happen, but only with town board approval, and that's one of them. So assuming that an existing retailer remains open at its current location but wants to open an anchor at the Brands, then that would be okay and would not require any further town board action because the agreement allows for that. Is that okay? You got it?
Okay.
Okay, explain this to me. An anchor grocer in Brands East is going to be charging consumer less sales tax than a grocer on Main Street. Is that correct?
If the developer chooses to waive
If you need that tool to.
the PIF, the credit PIF on it. So that it would allow the developer to waive some of that credit PIF or all of it. Whatever that is, we would still not collect sales tax from the anchor grocer in whatever that percentage turns out to be. And the result is at the cash register, the goods are just fractionally cheaper, which may be may be a draw to an anchor retailer.
Is there a time limit on that? Is that
No.
another 25? Okay.
Well, it's, once you get there, it's not any different than any other anchor retailer. It's the 25 years are out to 2045. We had talked at the staff level about whether that incentive to the anchor grocer should have a window in which it needed to be exercised, but we were persuaded that we didn't need to do that. So it's available, but just like every other retailer's rebates and credits, it expires after 25 years or the year 2047, whichever occurs sooner.
Miles, did you have some questions?
I have a question. Mr. Lin, what's a junior anchor? Can you give an example? It doesn't.
A junior anchor could be a building that's a little bit smaller but sells more than $15 million a year. So I suppose a good example could be in like a Forever 21 store.
Okay.
They're going to way exceed that, but they're out of a smaller square foot.
Yeah.
Another example, which would be everybody identify with, which would be Apple. But Apple may qualify for a major anchor, even though their footprint is littler, because they sell $30 to $50 million a year in their sales. A restaurant, an iconic destination restaurant, could qualify as junior if they're going to do 20 or 30 million in sales. When you, if you'll recollect the RTA project we're doing, the Boathouse, estimated to do about 20 million in sales. So they're currently doing $38 million on their one store in Florida. So something like that. It's all about the sales. It's all about that volume.
So some of the, we may have more than one anchor or major anchor based on.
We
what-
could.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about, how do the hotels fit into this? Are they part of, do they fall
Right.
into this?
Right now, I can answer that real clearly because we just went through this because we gave an incentive to this hotel right here, which is the Marriott.
Right.
And Windsor currently doesn't have a hotel tax.
Right.
So we self-imposed one to give back to the guy to be on parity with the Loveland side. So our agreement was if Windsor ever adopts a hotel tax, we'll take ours off. Windsor puts theirs on. And so Windsor doesn't currently have that, but we put that in privately, so we have that tool. It's an interesting deal out there because if we're not giving these incentives, we just flat out won't get the retailers. And one of the reasons I'm pretty excited to be in front of you tonight is because we have this giant property and we can do this all with one agreement, whereas we've been coming in, I mean, if you remember right, the Summit had a little street and it had the PIF and the hotel had this and everything was different. Now we have across the board one deal and everybody can partake as they want. 2 points about this that I think are real important to remember is both the Loveland and the Windsor side, there's absolutely no URA, there's no DDA. 100% of everything you see here is property sale or property tax collected. So all service districts, all school districts are 100% no waiver. Completely opposite of what you're seeing going on at Centerra or the Front Range Mall or the Foothills Mall, where they're offered up their sales tax at a parity where it is now. The property tax, and then the developer or the tenants get to keep all the future property tax for the next 25 years. There is none of that involved. So the other thing, which parlays also with what Loveland did, is this is a no-risk deal. It's 100% earn. If they don't produce, they don't get the refund. And so we were actually under the prior city government management in Loveland. There was a pretty heavy buy-in. A lot of cash was involved. And then when Loveland changed its city manager, he was the new city manager, Steve Adams, was very insecure about taking any risk with the city. So we had to retool and restart all over again. And so we're going to compete for retailers on 100% earn, no risk to the cities. They pull a permit, they're going to be paying property taxes whether they sell a donut or not. So that's what Loveland wanted and that's what they demanded. So that's what we brought in front of Windsor.
But will the gift shop at the hotel be part of this sales tax rebate?
Yeah, that's a separate item from property or from a hotel room. Anything that they're retailing, pop, water, that kind of stuff is subject to Windsor sales tax. Candy bars.
may I clarify that? The agreement for the hotel dealt with sales tax rebates. Am I correct that the hotel and Summit are not included in the Brands East agreement?
The first hotel is not, no. The second hotel would be this one.
Okay.
And the Summit is already on a, yeah, they were grandfathered in.
Right.
Same with 7-Eleven, they're not part of this.
Okay.
Oh.
I believe that the incentive fee that we did actually cover both bases of the hotels.
Oh, did it? Okay.
So, but all the hotels in the Summit would not be subject to this.
So that, and that's why you can see on this map, and that's why I was asking for clarification. The hotel sites are gray, the Summit site is gray, the 7-Eleven site is gray. That means that whatever happens on those sites is not captured in the Brands East agreement. They've got their own agreements, some of which have already been
Yeah.
performed, and some of them are yet to be performed.
Yeah, this one's 100% performed, paid off, this is. And you can imagine what a $100 million transaction or in this would do to the sales tax of the Summit, which Windsor will collect 100% on. So it's pretty exciting to think what's going to go on over there.
Okay.
Can I ask for us old or newbies on the board, what the incentive was at the summit?
The incentive at the summit was pretty simple. The developer asked us to install some infrastructure, a road, and I believe some underground infrastructure. We did that at our expense, about $650,000. The understanding, however, was that for a period of time, we collected the 1% retail improvement fee that the developer had imposed on the summit. So for a period of time, the summit was paying that 1% to us. And just, a couple of months ago, we paid that number. It was $159,000. So starting in August of 2014 through about August, December-ish of 2016, the summit's 1% PIF satisfied that number for us. So that was the summit. The remaining infrastructure, that roadway and some of the pipe that's in the ground, is available to serve those pads that Martin is pointing to here. So that infrastructure is available even to sites that will be benefited by the Brands East agreement.
It's about $650,000 less than $150,000 payback, so about $500,000 of investment the town did into the infrastructure on the payback of sales tax from the summit activities and over time.
But the town is charged in the future for all the maintenance of those roadways and infrastructure,
Yes.
correct?
That is correct.
Additional questions?
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, good
Mr.
question.
Adams.
Well, I had a question quite a while ago, and I think the discussion about the anchor grocers probably answered it. But Martin, I think you know that I live in an area and represent an area called Water Valley. And I hear lots of conversations about a grocery store, a major grocery store, somewhere between Water Valley and probably the Brands. And, but they're saying that they're going to Greeley to the King Soopers because it's actually closer. And I just wondered, do you see any possibility of a grocery store, a major grocery store in that would be northeast corner of the Brands? Would be closer to Water Valley? Because I think they would even want to further north, but I think it would be a beautiful part of your plan.
Yeah. Mr. Adams, for every complaint you get about not having a grocery on the south side of Windsor, I get 900 of them. So I feel your pain. We really have a bad grocery leakage, basically from Eastman Park South. And it could be even 7th Street in Eastman and 257 South. We think that there is a grocer anchor is going to happen at this intersection somewhere. Loveland, could go as far south as 34, but we think a major grocer's gonna come in, and someone's gonna service this population. We think we have advantages to get that. We think that we have demographics and proximity to current neighbors. This apartment complex right here will be a big driver for that. The Highland Meadows, coming right down New Liberty, picking up all of Raindance right into this. We think that we can demonstrate where we have neighborhood connectivity that all of the other sites that we know they're looking at don't have. So I can't assure you that it's gonna be in the Windsor side, but I think that I can assure you that we have as good a chance as getting it in Windsor as any of the other cities do, provided we offer them the incentives. Someone's gonna service that population, no question about it.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay,
I will-
Mr. Bennett.
I just want to clarify my understanding, so in case I'm asked,
Sure.
I can explain it correctly, or for the next business that comes forward for
Sure.
next prospect. We are not giving a blanket $6.60 building waiver per square footage. We're giving actual building fee
Up
waiver,
to,
which is
yes.
significantly less than $6.60 per total square footage.
Correct.
Did I explain that correctly?
That's right.
Good, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
is that it? Okay, Mr. Morgan?
I'm done, yeah.
Okay. Did you have something?
I was gonna ask Mr. Lynn, if a major grocer anchor was not to come to the site illustrated here in Brands East, where would it go on the Larimer County side? Do you have something that would fit that you've already master planned that would? I'm just trying to
This-
call if it's not here, where
Right.
else it would fit.
This is an anchor location right here. We're hoping that's more fashion. This is anchor, there's 2 anchor sites on the west side. We're kind of pessimistic about that because if you look at it, I don't have a more blow-up map, but if you look at this side, it's all airport and Fossil Creek Reservoir and Boyd Lake Reservoir, so you don't have a very good north-south connectivity like you have County Road 5 and Highland Meadows Parkway. And we really do see the neighborhood services being served on this side. If you look at Centerra's master plan, if you go south, and I don't have a blow-up, I didn't bring it tonight, but they have 3,000 units planned straight south of this intersection, right here. So since the frontage is already gone from the church and Walmart and the sporadic development here, a grocer anchor, if they were gonna go south, would have to go down in the field about a mile. I think that leaves this very high-profile intersection where everybody's already coming to this intersection. I think that leaves it susceptible for other competition. So I think there's a lot of reasons why we think Windsor's in a really good position for this. Obviously, those guys are big, they do their studies and they know where they wanna go, and we just wanna make sure that we have a competitive foot in the game.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Morgan.
Thanks, Mark. Just so I'm clear, is the entire master plan for all the Brands projects, west, central, for lack of a better term, and east, covered under the same metro district? Is there one metro district for
No.
all of that?
Nope, there'll be three
Separate?
districts, and the reason that Windsor's has a lower mill levy is so that we could account for the higher natural mill levy from the fire department in the town of Windsor over Loveland.
So we spent a lot of time working on our model service plan for that. How consistent will this be with that, and does that fit into, I guess, what would happen on the Loveland side with, if they had a model service plan? I don't know if they do or not, but how, in terms of kind of those mill levy caps that are built
We
into
already
that?
have the districts in place out here
Oh, you're-
on the Loveland, and, yeah, and we,
So how does our model service plan compare to those existing districts that are there?
Gary White's done all of our district. He's here. I think fundamentally, they all have mill levy caps. They have certain things that you can and can't do with the mill levy. So I think they're pretty standardized. Very all the districts we run, Water Valley, Iron Mountain, Raindance, and the Brands, they're all almost identical.
Yeah, I just, when I'm reading this, it talks about some of the specific, at least some of the maintenance issues that, I mean, they're gonna draw from that. I mean, that's an ongoing piece that the Metro District's gonna have to fund, and is
Right.
that being sourced only from Brands East mill levy, or?
We're gonna homogenize the whole development so that the metro districts cover common signage, common architecture, all of these things. In fact, we're bringing giant drainage right now off of this site from a 2-decade-old agreement that comes back into a small detention pond back here. And that allowed us to capture all of this frontage and not have detention up here. We've actually put it in a pipe, brought it down. And so that metro district is maintaining and taking care of all that. We're doing a big regional project with the county to bring some more of it, to bring more developable land up along County Road 5. So we're slaving each district back and forth to make sure that, you know, it's odd to have this many acres under one common ownership, but it also is a giant advantage for us all right now.
I guess that goes to kind of the heart of my question then, is how much of that mill levy, whatever it happens to be, that the Metro District assesses, how much of that is going towards maintenance of this detention area, when most of that detention really is coming from a different district? I'm just not, maybe I'm out overthinking this,
Well,
but is there a parity there with how much responsibility is on this district? And the reason I'm asking is, I mean, we're the approving authority for that service plan, so how much?
Our agreement with staff so far is that our districts be 100% responsible for that detention, maintenance and construction. So there is some off-site drainage that's going on here, but it's the natural drainage flow anyway. It's going through there irregardless.
But it seemed like initially there was a lot of drainage coming from the other side of Road 5 onto the Windsor side. Is that, am I?
There is.
Okay.
Yeah, we're capturing an area right here, and we're putting it down in here, but what we did is it gets so deep down in this area that we actually didn't lose any developable. We actually, with a redesign here, we gained some more developable in a project that we don't even own, but we did it for this developer over here. So it's just a big regional master plan on this, on the stormwater, and I guess if your question is are we laboring the Windsor district heavier?
Kind
That's
of.
the question?
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit on that, but like the Loveland, this district here, that plaza is about a $12 million plaza. And so that district is labored with that, and that plaza is gonna draw a lot of people, you know, into this area. So we think it homogenizes. We think that having, I mean, it's far better than us being a different owner over here than here.
Yeah.
Because then we're not homogenizing, we're competing.
And just on a different note, is there any concern or any concern that there's a military base that's kind of in that general area? Now you've got grocers and housing and all these things that are kind of creeping up on that exact property.
You know, it is a readiness facility, but they want those readiness facilities in the community. And if you look at this particular one, it looks like a big house. It's got, I mean, it's got a hipped roof on a,
I just didn't know if they had certain requirements distance-wise that, you know, the town should know about, what's being stored there. I don't know, I mean.
No, they don't, it's on its third roof. But in fact, like this week, the entire parking lot was full. They had activities going on, education, and I never saw a body outside the building all weekend when I went by.
Yeah, it's actually, when they originally introduced this project, it's a very big economic driver on weekends because they're using the restaurants and hotels, and it's virtually silent. They don't do any activities there that are outside. They're storing, but they're not doing activities. And it's very residential. I mean, it shocked us what they proposed there. Our other readiness facility down in the Great Western's beautiful. I mean, it's silent. So it's not, there's no shooting range, there's no discharging or anything, and so I don't know.
No, my only concern is that, has it just been completely vetted out, that they know what this project is, and that in the 11th hour, we're not gonna get notification that, oh, by the way, you can't have that type of.
Yeah, no, we anticipate none of that. In fact, they're excited to see more infrastructure come in out there.
Good.
Going along with Christian's question, I would just ask about the apartment complexes across the street from the, I don't know if that's considered to be Highland Meadows, across Highland Meadows Parkway right there, you know. Has there been any objection to having that?
There's actually a neighborhood meeting on that tonight, so it's going on as we speak. It'll be the first introduction of that project, but, you know, it's interesting, we were just in front of you last week going for the mini storage having to go to light industrial and a residential, and here we're taking the light industrial out. It's, I said the same quote back to, in the Loveland council meetings, this entire area was always conceived as the backyard. This was Windsor's backyard when this was first brought in, and that was zoned light industrial. This entire thing was light industrial. This entire side over here is heavy and light industrial, with a down zoning, use by right all the way down to residential and commercial. But this was never seen as Loveland or Windsor's front door. And so with the adoption of these design standards and these business assistance agreements, it truly will become Windsor's front door on that crossroads. And I think, Kelly, you might have seen the last elevations on the hotel, but we asked them to up the standards quite a bit, and they brought rock up 4 floors. And so if we look at what having no guidelines out there and us holding a standard without having a recorded document of guidelines, we really got the Summit to build a very impressive building. Nordy's, we developed that, and they brought a lot higher in than we thought, and now with Alpeche's Marriott, it's a beautiful, beautiful building. So I think we really are going to introduce the front door to Windsor on Crossroads, and it's going to be a beautiful first approach into Windsor.
Mr. Baker, but before we go to you, I had a question that followed up with Metro Districts, just based on some conversation that some folks in our community have been asking, who are less than happy with their current Metro Districts. What happens if this Metro District goes bankrupt or is not fulfilling its obligation? Who becomes the responsible party then for all of the amenities that are deemed within those properties that the Metro District's supposed to take care of?
I think I can answer that. I think Colorado legislature got together about 25 years ago, and they passed legislation that virtually makes it impossible for a Metro District to go bankrupt, because you cannot assess debt anymore until the assessed valuation is there first. So the Metro Districts that went bankrupt, and the ones that come to mind are the Castle Pines back in the late 80s. They assessed debt based on a hypothetical pro forma, how many houses they were going to sell in the next 10 years. Well, when that didn't happen, all of a sudden they had to continue by law raising the mill levy to satisfy the debt. And so there was a $500,000 house that was on the news down there that had an $800,000 tax bill. So I think it was in 1992, state legislature changed that law, and they made it illegal for a Metro District to assess any debt or to issue any debt prior to the assessed valuation being there first, or a third-party guarantee for that Metro District debt. So for instance, a CD from the developer or whatever. So Metro Districts really can't go bankrupt. The other thing about this district is, of course, in Colorado, commercial pays triple what residential does. And since this project is so heavily laden with commercial, it's gonna be a very healthy Metro District. Yeah. And I don't know who's coming to you complaining about Metro Districts, but we seem to be, if they're Water Valley, they're not coming to us. We just had a big neighborhood meeting on water rate increase, and we had 6 people show up, and people see our Metro Districts as a terrific bargain. Of course, there's only $100 a year HOA fee out there, but we think the Metro Districts are a windfall for our neighbors. So I know there are some that are run different than others, but we're pretty proud of our standing.
Okay, Mr. Baker?
Yeah, how will the expedited approval go? Is that gonna be in conflict with what we've already, with Raindance and Water Valley? How will that work?
I think it aligns with kind of what Windsor already does on commercial. Windsor already has a commercial fast track, so the expedited approval isn't requested for the residential, it's just strictly on commercial. Windsor's already got a fast track solution for that, so we're fitting right in that.
Okay, and Mr. Arnold, you talked about design standards and there's a corridor plan, correct?
Correct.
Will this fall into that, or are we gonna create something new out here?
We're in Loveland, had corridor plans, and there was kind of a Heinz 57 of stuff going on out there, so we're doing an overlay district for everything, so it'll be the new guidance document. Has to do with setbacks, has to do with colors, architectural signage, everything, and we expect the same thing on the Windsor side.
And it will just cover the whole
Yep.
gamut, so that it's consistent across.
Yep.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay,
Just real quick.
okay.
Just to Miles' point, I read it here and I can't find it at the moment, but it would require the town to actually have a staff person assigned to this project?
Yep, I think it does, correct. We
That's
did
what a lot of
it,
request says, I don't know
yeah,
if
we
do
did it
request.
in Loveland, we did, just so that we had one liaison.
One person.
Yeah,
The agreement doesn't, the letter request does.
The letter.
Yeah.
And I just need to make sure that our town manager is comfortable with that.
As long as it's not Scott.
So not an exclusive staff member, but just somebody that would be assigned to the
Yeah,
project.
just somebody that was familiar with the design guidelines and somebody, yeah.
I have a feeling if it doesn't move fast enough, I'll be the assigned one.
I'll be calling.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Anything else? If not, I had some questions, so I'll follow up with mine. So in our packet, we had the highlights of how this is all envisioned to be laid out with the anchor and the junior anchor and all of that. What happens if, or how flexible is our agreement if it doesn't lay out exactly like this? Like, what if, because it says, you know, in here, I don't know, there's 74,000 square feet of junior anchor space. What is the process if somebody all of a sudden says, now there's only gonna be maybe 50 because we want that other 24 dedicated? Does it allow for some variation, or how true to this initial plan that we're seeing does everybody have to follow?
This plan is totally conceptual in nature, but it gives us the guidance document to allow us to go out and market it. By example, this site, let me find my mouse, this site right here, if it were to be cut in half, this north piece right here would hold a user, by example, I'm not representing that, but by example, that would be a Top Golf size user, and if you're familiar with those, you know, those are a $30 million a year, possibly more. So we feel comfortable that we have the street system and the parallel system with the fiber optics. It's quite an obstruction out there, that it's gonna follow this pretty close. But, you know, if we end up not getting a big anchor here and it needs to be split in half, we're still gonna try to achieve the same amount of sales tax per acre on the red.
And what does that do, Mr. McCarter? Does our agreement have that kind of enough allowance for that flexibility as well? It doesn't determine any exact square footages to that extent that it holds anybody exactly?
that's right. The agreement doesn't prescribe what areas will be dedicated to anchors versus junior anchors versus others. It's up to the developer to market the property. And if it becomes a farm, if you will, of junior anchors, then the sales tax rate remains the same. The rebate's just lower for a junior. And the rebate is just lower for an other retailer, even the lesser creatures beneath that. So I don't,
And all those definitions are included in our agreement so that there's this understanding moving in. We know, we're all defining junior anchor, retail, and anchor all the same way.
right. So that was one of the things that Mr. White and I worked on in this agreement versus the Loveland agreement. We set out the definitions up front alphabetically so we all know what those terms mean. And then every time we use a defined term in the agreement, it's in bold print. So there's no question when we use a defined term what that means. And I think Gary and I have reached the conclusion that in order to make sure that we're using those terms consistently throughout, that's the best way to do it. And I'm satisfied that there's no ambiguity to that.
Okay. And then in our 10-year cost and benefits analysis that you laid out for us, is that number based on that the full 300-acre build-out? Or what percentage of that, or, I mean, or what are we talking about when we're looking at that $34 million number in 10 years?
Right, so that, thank you, Madam Mayor, town board members, this economic impact analysis takes the entire property into
Okay.
consideration, so.
At
it-
full build-out?
At full build-out. So it does includes multifamily, includes industrial, and includes retail. So at the end of the day, this fiscal analysis is minus the percentage per square foot that you want to give back up to 660. It's minus the weighted average of sales tax back, and it's minus the cost of providing services to those residents and businesses in the town. This is really net-net.
Okay.
So this is really what we would get at the end of the day. There are numbers up top that we can get into that talk about for the whole town, like after 10 years is 181 million, and we can break those out. This is the school district's gonna get this, the fire district's gonna get this. So there's a whole big general bubble too. But the town, after we pay, based off of our budget, what we pay to snow shovel, to part, all of that, that's our net at the end, including all the properties as proposed, 429 units, X amount of industrial, as well as the proposed retail.
Okay. And knowing you, you've done that probably on a very, you know, on a minimal level, right?
Correct. This is
You're being very
conservative.
cautious of those
Right.
numbers. Okay. My last question is, because I did some research on the Avalon and Station Park, and those things all developed, I mean, they came into development way back in 2011, and, you know, it took 5-6 years before they saw their build-out, you know. Even like in 2015, I think Station Park or whatever was finally announcing, you know, some big fulfillment. So mine has to do with, since we're tied to all of these with a number of years, so who has to track that? Mr. Moyer's out? I mean, it's because each specific tenant is gonna be separate, right? The 25-year doesn't start the minute one junior anchor pulls it. It's all individual. So we're gonna be charged with having to track that,
Right.
correct?
What, that burden is incremental up to the 5th anniversary of this agreement, but then there's an all-in drop dead date. No matter, so if it takes us 6 years to get an anchor, then we're only eligible for 24 years of sharing. Or if it takes us 10 years, we're only eligible, you know. So we did do a drop dead date.
Okay.
All in, no matter what, there is a hard stop on the incentive agreement. But it's kind of, the way we have this 5-year ramp up, it's kind of to our advantage because it creates a sense of urgency. Because a lot of times, Walmart, right over here in Windsor, they buy a site and they just hold it. So having this hard stop is a great incentive to prevent that speculation on dirt or to prevent other retailers from servicing an area and them not having to invest in it. Walmart's the best example right here in Windsor. They bought the land and just sit on it. So I think what we have here is that we're gonna use that hard stop as the incentive to get people to go fast.
I should also point out too, Madam Mayor, that the $6.60 credit, that only stands for the first 5 years. Once you get to year 6, that goes away. Anyone who comes in after that point, the
It's not
waiver doesn't
eligible.
apply. At least that waiver doesn't.
It also doesn't apply to tenants not anchored.
Right.
Right.
So all of the small shops and all that stuff, they're not eligible for these incentives. And they know that. You know, I mean, that's not a surprise to them.
Any other questions? And so our direction this evening, you just want to make sure that we're okay with seeing this on our next agenda?
I think if you have anything you want to see changed, modified, would be helpful to know that tonight. Otherwise, what you have in front of you is what we've been talking with the representatives for about a month and a half, or about a month at least. And if nothing changes tonight, you have the versions which you'll see on March 27th in your packet for your consideration. So I don't know if there's anything that you would like to express to us of concerns at this point, that we can continue working on if need be, or need to be addressed tonight?
Are there any concerns? My only concern, but you addressed it, was the equalization between Loveland and Windsor, but I think you made some good points about that doesn't have to be part of the conversation or how we arrange this current package.
Yeah, I think it's not as concerning as originally anticipated.
Okay.
I did have one more question. Did we talk to our retail consultant about this project?
We have.
Okay.
She doesn't necessarily agree with it too much.
The incentive piece?
Yes, but, you know, I don't know if she knows if it's gonna take off like Mr. Lynn does. She may not share the same enthusiasm. You know, and you know her personality and such. So, her advice is, you know, I think her advice would be, you know, if you wanna sit, you can sit out this and wait, but the problem is if you wait and something happens across the street, how long are you gonna wait? And, you know, when, if you believe Mr. Lynn, when is the turn for this to develop or not? So, it's just like anything, I don't know. And so, that's kind of her opinion is, if you want to be a part of this, this is probably the best thing to do at this stage. If you think there's a better time, then you should probably sit and wait. You not do anything.
When is she coming back to talk to the board again?
I don't know if we have anything scheduled or not.
We're still working on that. We're waiting for projects like this to get finalized so that we know our areas of interest to focus on. Because when we originally did our assessment, this wasn't part of our game plan. So now we need to know what areas of town we're really gonna focus on from a specific focus of retail. So that's what we're kind of waiting for, some of this to get done, but then we're gonna hit it as soon as we can.
I'm not trying to get her involved in the mix, I was just following up on it.
Yeah,
Seemed
so
like
but philosophically, it's exactly what Stacy and her recommended, was identify some areas of development that you wanted to have happen and enter into relationship with that developer to get it going. Well, Martin beat us to it, and said, here it is. So essentially, that's where we've put our effort over the last 2 months, is on this area.
And we did talk to her about price per square foot, if that was really a realistic thing of what she's seen and what they did, and she said, yeah. So
Right.
we did
That's
talk
true.
to her about that as well, just, you
Yeah.
know, to make sure.
Well,
that-
yeah, and like I said, I spent some time, you know, researching some of these other entities that were in the packet, and I think I'm encouraged by like the mayor and some of the comments made and how it affected some of those communities there. It has been very good. It's been a positive thing. It has been a catalyst, which I think is what we're referencing here. So I think this really could be a positive, and at least we have a good relationship with the developer here, and I think he's taken a lot of our thought and consideration of kind of what we want into consideration in creating this package. So, you know, so I don't have anything different to add to
And
what.
if you go back, I think, Martin, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is really at least a 2-year effort to come to this conclusion. And a lot of it stemmed from your involvement in the RTA. And what that brought forth interest-wise to this region. And Martin saw that and felt that and recognizes, and he's a lot closer than anybody else in this room to it, that there is some synergy to this area in northern Colorado, and so he wants to take advantage of it and get going on it.
Yeah, and the burden of having that property and holding that through the recession, believe me, I tried auctioning it off. If someone would have offered me 2 dead dogs and maybe a cat, I would have taken it. But as it is, we ended up hanging on to have all this, and we have this massive land deal. And when we did the RTA, those studies came in and those operators came in, and we really started looking at this area as a whole, and not just Windsor, not just Loveland, but we lifted up. And we have one of the most dynamic areas in the nation. And Stacy just sent me a PowerPoint on job growth. It's a fluid motion for the last 10 years. It's amazing. We were one of the last to go into negative job growth in the recession and one of the first in the entire nation to come back out of it. And it tells you how dynamic we are. And, you know, if you really look, if you focus on this intersection, there's about 750,000 people in a 30-minute drive ring. And I think we have that on this. And so, oops. There,
Second slide.
there we go. So if you focus on that star, we're really got the opportunity to build downtown northern Colorado. And it's all virgin wheat fields. It's greenfield. And we have this weird opportunity. Normally, cities grow out into suburbia. We have suburbia coming into downtown. And virtually every building permit on those three blue cities right there are on the brand side or the Budweiser Insider of those cities. And so if you take that population base and you take a 2% growth rate, it's a town the size of Windsor, somewhere in that area every year. So that's 2 grocery stores, 1 police station, 2 high schools, 2 middle schools, 4 elementaries, and all the rooftops that bring that. That's what's being built inside this area every year. So given the fact that we're on the building permit side of all this, I think it's our turn. I think it's really going to come together. And we're going to have another recession, and we want to beat that, and we want to take advantage of low interest rates and low bonding rates. And Steve Graham will tell you that of all of the lifestyle centers he's built, all of the real value comes outside of that. So I think a lot of the land that we're going to see some exciting stuff on is stuff that I don't own. It's going to be here and up here and on down Crossroads, and because once an area like this really starts gaining traction, there's all kinds of stuff goes on right beside it.
Will those apartments, those 429, will those be something that the retail folks will be able to rent, or what, you know what the?
We're so short of affordable housing in Windsor.
Right.
That this is really needed for both the retail jobs, but also just for the rooftops that drive a grocery store. That's very, very important to that guy right there if that ends up being grocery. So, and another cool thing about this area, and that's what the Lifestyle Center is going to have, and Scott and I have talked about bringing some more of possibly that type of retail. If we could bring some more of that in this area, where you have people that aren't getting in a car, they're walking, they're on a bike, they're going. This area could be a much higher density area than any of us ever conceived. We're working with the service districts, water, sewer, all that kind of stuff to make sure that works. But, you know, if you're out in that area, the entertainment and the shopping is already there, so you're not hopping back in your car. And, you know, we get the luxury, we get to build downtown before you know, out of nothing, we get to build downtown of an area, and I think it's pretty exciting.
Okay. Any other comments or questions or direction for Mr. Arnold? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Okay, and then our third and last item on our agenda this evening is future meetings. Mr. Arnold.
Next week, we have no meeting. And then the following Monday on the 20th, we have 2 items we'd like to bring to you for work session. First one is in fact, today I worked on it and did a laundry list of transportation ideas and updates and things that are working through that I want to get you in a loop on. We've kind of touched on them, but some are pretty important to do a little bit deeper dive on. And make sure that you understand what's coming your way for either construction or agreements and such. And then the other item is that the Metro District of Highland Meadows is wanting to expand over to the Loveland side. They held a neighborhood meeting last Thursday for their proposal for townhomes on the Loveland side and such. And so I think what they'd like to do is come in and talk to you about that expansion. They would like to expand the Windsor Metro District over to Loveland. So I wanna make sure you hear that, understand that, and see what amenities and such are gonna be offered there, including the school site. And then get some feedback from you as to what you think you need for your consideration and approval of an expansion of the Metro District. So it'll be a kind of a preliminary talk through for them showing you what they wanna do and then let you kind of sort through that with them. The 27th, right now we have no work session scheduled. Don't know if that's gonna hold or not, and we have a regular meeting. I think the current board meeting, we decided we do not need to hold this month, so we will probably strike that and cancel that this month. April 3rd is Crosswalk Education. Fun-filled night of crosswalks. But it's one of your strategic plans items. We want to get on that, talk about what you have now, what we're doing to educate, and then where do we want to go with that issue. We also going to have some of that discussion get into our code amendment as we work through our zoning and development code. So it is kind of an important discussion and something you want to talk about. That's pretty much as far as the schedule I have right now. I do have the Parks Master Plan. I'm gonna get that back on the schedule, so that's April 17th right now. And that's all I have for right now. You all have anything you'd like to see? You saw that, and I think the mayor's question, a good question about metro districts. Over the course of the next 45 to 60 days, I'd like to sit down with you, just talk about that topic again. And in that time, I hope to prepare for you kind of a map of where they all are, summary of each one, and when they started, and all those good things that we can start having in front of us, keep track of our metro districts. And so that when I'm gonna sit down with my staff and ask how long that's gonna take, and then based upon that answer, I'll schedule a Metro District conversation with you out probably April, maybe early May.
Regarding metro districts, the question I get from people, particularly one area, is who holds the metro district accountable? If the metro district has promised they're going to do certain things and they don't do it, what recourse do citizens have? So that's the question I'm really trying to understand.
We expect to bring in our Metro District attorney, kind of do the statute 101 that you heard tonight. And then what's your role? What is not your role? In that conversation.
Could we have a brief reminder of the benefits of a metro district versus the HOA? Just a little quick.
Philosophical?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We can do
Just
that.
people ask me that.
Yes. Probably.
I think I know, but.
Probably depends on who you're talking to. I mean, but yes, we'll talk about why they are formed, what the benefit is, primarily to the developer and gaining infrastructure in different process. So
Okay.
we can have that conversation.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay, seeing nothing, we will conclude this evening's work session and see you in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Okay.
And the four of you that are going to DC, we want to like to gather and just go over the itinerary. If you don't mind, I don't know if you want to do it. James is more